Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Thunder, and this is Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. And we have an interesting topic. It's one of those sort of buzzword topics. It's a buzzword topic. Yes, we're going to be talking about toxic people. Strategies for freeing yourself from toxic people. So, if you're having trouble wriggling free from toxicity at your job, perhaps even maybe even amongst members of your family, oh, then this is the show to check out. Once again, strategies for freeing yourself from toxic people. This is Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. What's happening, man? Are you
What is up? What is up?
so you're still in Africa. You're in Ghana,
Yep, I'm in
Accra,
Ghana, the
Ghana.
city of Accra, Ghana,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't know. I might be here till till March. It might be. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So you're getting ish done. You're getting ish done out there.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's a crazy year, as we know. All kinds of turbulence out there and uncertainty as far as the economy goes. All kinds of restructuring is going on, and sometimes it's a good time to take the opportunity to stretch yourself even further and scare yourself even more. Right?
That's right. What does not kill you only will make you stronger.
Shout out to Friedrich Nietzsche.
That's right. Just try not to break any bones or tear any tendons or ligaments.
Oh
As
yeah,
long as
I'll
it's
stay away
all the
from.
way up to the edge of that,
Yes, yes,
then you
yes,
can
yes, yes.
recover. Yeah. Yeah.
Stay away from the toxic people who might do that to me. So
That's right. That's right. All right. Um, yeah.
Amazing.
Okay. So please like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member where you get access to all archive videos, support black male media, support independent media. Super chats enabled. Super thanks for the replay gang. But everywhere else other than YouTube, you can also support Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. So let's go ahead and get into it. Hello. Hello, folks. I got some folks in here. Shout out to Phil, Brad. Shout outs to James S. And shout out to Shirley McLeod Nicholson. And thank you for all of those hearts. All of the love, much appreciated. Shout out to my folks on LinkedIn, and shout out to the folks on Twitter, to the folks on Twitch, to the folks on Facebook, and of course, to my fam on YouTube. So, this video is called, that we're taking a look at today, is called 15 Ways Intelligent People Deal with Difficult and Toxic People. 15 Ways Intelligent People Deal with Difficult and Toxic People. And Ike, I want you to talk to us a little bit just about your initial impression, just based on the title alone.
okay, well, there's the obvious one. Okay, for those of you whom uh, are fans of the show and have been around before, you know I'm gonna say something about 15, right? That number 15, there's no way there's 15 ways of doing anything, or 15, pieces of any kind of advice, right? It's typically boils down to something very, very much more narrow than that. It's a particular pet peeve of mine, because I think that you're missing something by giving people more information like that rather than telling them something that's more fundamental. I'm a fundamentalist that way, because when you tell them something that's fundamental, then they only have to remember three things, let's say, right? But the other thing is toxic. The word toxic. That obviously, the word toxic itself is toxic, right? It has infected the discourse in a manner that is not, shall we say, helpful, because it is a way of it is just one of these big basket words that just it's like a shield, a spear, and uh, we know what we mean, right? We know what we mean. We around this parts of YouTube or TikTok or social media, just calling somebody toxic is a very shorthand way of throwing all kinds of jabs at them in in a sense that is where you are supposed to be politically correct, right? You're the one. When you say toxic, you're immediately putting yourself in the right corner, and they're in the wrong place. It's not just that they're. I like the difficult aspect though. It's like, okay, toxic and difficult. It's like, okay, cool, difficult works. They could have just left toxic out, but toxic is there, I believe, for the algorithm, right? Because people are going to click on the word toxic. So reaction to
That's right.
15, the reaction to the word toxic. And then one more thing as to the topic itself in terms of dealing with people. I'm a from an inside out type of person. Okay. Now you can live your life from the outside in as well. I'm not saying that there's only one way to live your life, but when it comes to something like this, I would say that perhaps the first thing to do is to deal with yourself. Just one
Mm-hmm.
point on this, for example, if you see microaggressions everywhere, um, perhaps you need to handle something within. You need to clean up your lenses, right? Because as we talked about the Tesla logic, right? Where if you buy a Tesla, you see Teslas everywhere, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
putting the right kinds of goals, the right kinds of things in your mind, these little things such as microaggressions and such should not be the things that you see. Or because if you want to see microaggressions, you're going to see them, right? You're going to see them all over the place. And
Yep.
uh, I'm a very observant person, so I notice things a lot, but I quickly forget. So point being, living your life, like the main thing here is to start from the internal piece, you working on your internal constitution, reaching into your heart also, and cutting out that part of that makes you think you're obligated to other people is a great way of dealing with quote unquote toxic people.
Yeah. All right. Uh, with your criticism of this 15, you know, 15
We shall
ways.
see though. Maybe.
uh, there's 12-step programs, and a lot of those programs have been tremendously helpful for folks, right? And
Yeah.
it seems like your approach is more of the um,
Mhm.
no 12-step program, no 15 ways. It's just one step to Jesus. That's all you need, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Just step to Jesus. One
Yeah.
step. Just step to Jesus.
Yeah, anyone who has also looked at the 12-step programs too will be able to see that, okay, a lot of this can be consolidated. 12 is a nice number for some reason, right? And so they
Now wait a
go
minute.
through the
Wait a
steps.
minute,
Yeah.
Ike. Wait a minute, Ike. Are you saying that Jesus did not need 12 disciples? Are you
um,
saying that Israel did not need 12 tribes?
12 is a nice number. I can't front on that aesthetically. It's a good, it actually sounds good too.
Are
12.
you saying that we need fewer days per week? You really only need about 3 days, right? Come on, let's just be honest. You need about 3 days, and then let's just call it the next week after that. All right.
Well, why not?
Anyhow. All right, here we go. And of course, this is fair use.
Brainy Dose presents 15 Ways Intelligent People Deal with Difficult and Toxic People. Toxic people always seem to cause unnecessary drama. They're often the driving force behind a conflict. They drive down morale in the workplace, and they negatively impact the emotional well-being of those who have to deal with them. Some are blissfully unaware of the negative impact that they have on those around them, while others seem to derive satisfaction from creating chaos and pushing other people's buttons. The worst part is that it can be tempting to give toxic people the same treatment they give to others. Of course, this never works. They aren't capable of much self-reflection, and turnabout only makes them see themselves as victims. The best way to deal with difficult people is to use the following techniques, commonly practiced by intelligent people. Number 1. Set limits. Complainers and negative people are bad news. They wallow in their problems and they want others to join in, so that they can feel better about themselves. People often feel pressure to listen to complainers because they don't want to be seen as insensitive or rude. But there's a fine line between lending a sympathetic ear and getting sucked into their negative emotional spiral. You can avoid this only by setting limits and distancing yourself when necessary. Just think of it this way. If the complainer were smoking, would you sit there all day inhaling the secondhand smoke? Probably not. You distance yourself, and you should do the same with complainers. Number 2.
All right. So we have the first point.
Hmm.
So what do you think of the first point?
I think the first point is quite relevant. I think it's a good point. It goes into what I was saying earlier about cutting out whatever it is that makes you feel obligated, whatever it is that makes you think you have to save face or you have to look a certain way. I believe they even said it, like you don't want to be seen as being rude, those kinds of things, right? And I know that personality thing comes into this, right? And some people have an advantage in this regard. So beyond the introversion thing, I've always really not cared. And when I say I don't care, it's not some kind of like it's not a positive thing. It's like I'm going out there with this big shield and sword, like I don't care. It's like I really don't care, is what I'm saying. Right? Um, about people's notion of about me, right? Now, I'm not out there putting false notions of myself and all those kinds of things like that, but it's almost like if you can't see what I'm about, then you're not really worth my time, and I don't have to waste my time with you. If you know what I'm about, I don't have to waste my time with you either, because you should be able to you'll see what I'm about. I think I'm a
Right.
very open book, so I don't go around spending a lot of energy trying to seem like something. Okay, and I'm rather direct, and some people say maybe a little bit abrasive, rude, or whatever under certain circumstances from their perspective. But I think that is a superpower in this case. You should not be, and when they say set limits, I guess they didn't really tell you to set limits, and probably that this is how to set limits, and maybe they'll expand upon that in some of the other points. But if you find it, if you ever start thinking, well, oh, but how would that make me look? How would they look at me? How would that seem though? But this is not da 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 da. If you find yourself saying things like, before you make a statement, you say, oh, well, I hate to be pessimistic, but um, not to bring down the mood, but those kinds of things, you need to start wondering, asking yourself, why am I doing this kind of equivocation? Okay, but I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think if you're really on your purpose, um, then you'll tend to it'll tend it a lot of folks won't be able to rock with you. They'll kind of fall off, and um if you're like kind of not about the foolishness, like I'm not going to spend a bunch of time trying to convince you that you should deal with me. I'm not gonna do that because I know what I'm doing. So you can get on the train or off the train, but I'm not gonna wait for you to get on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good thing.
Now,
I
but
think
how
that's
do
a good
you?
thing. It can be. I think
Okay.
it can be a little lonely at times. But that's a good thing. Uh, but more specifically to the point about just not dealing with folks that aren't worthy of dealing with. I'm not a politician,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just going to say what it is, and I'm going to do what I think I need to do. And if you can't deal with that, you can't deal with it. Now, I'm somewhat of a diplomat, which I know that maybe that sounds like opposite things, but being a diplomat is only useful when you actually have people sitting down at the table. Being a
Makes
politician
sense.
seems to be the recruitment part to get people to the table. I'm not really going to spend very much time trying to get people to the table. I don't care if you come to the table or not.
Let me try to thread a middle road between that there, because
Sure.
I like the definitely don't be a politician for the sake of politicking, for the sake of just recruiting random people. I like that you mentioned getting things done, and I'm going to talk about an analogy here about how I tend to be, how I tend to operate. I'm more like a spider in the middle of a vast web. Okay. And this vast web is connecting to people and things all over. And I'm making minimal movements and stuff like that. But the connections are all based on some kind of transactional exchange. Transactional, not because it's not meaningful, but because it has to do with competence, to your whole point of being on your purpose, right?
Right.
The people that I'm going to be interacting with, quote unquote, recruiting, quote unquote, keeping on my good side, there's always a reason for it. So, and it tends not to, I'm very good at compartmentalizing. It tends not to therefore bleed out into, I don't let their ish, if you will, bleed out into other aspects of my life, right?
Yep.
So when you're dealing with people based on competence, based on what they're bringing to the table, and based on what's something that you want from them. Now, again, this sounds cold and calculating, and that's because it is, okay? And if you're thinking, oh, how does that, well, why am I being so cold? Then you have to go back to my first point, which is, hey, you got an issue, go talk to a therapist. If you don't, if you're constantly thinking of, oh, how is this going to make me look? Does that not seem cold, or does that not seem calculating? You are completely caught in that extroverted feeling. Go check out MBTI and Myers-Briggs. I use this terminology a lot because I think it's very useful psychologically. You're too caught up in extroverted feeling. You're too caught on in the esprit de corps, the spirit of the group, everybody needs to feel comfortable all the time with everything that's going on. Otherwise, if I smile wrong, how does that make me look? So, point being, middle of the spider in the middle of a web, concentric webs going all around. People are there typically for a reason. I don't bleed one person into, like, if I keep people at arm's length very well, several orbits, if you can imagine this web kind of going out. There's people who are close to the center, people who are further away from the center. I don't drop people just because I want to drop them. I keep them so long as they serve a purpose. Some of the purpose might just be to block me from other people that may infiltrate the situation, right? So if I'm in an organization, right, and I wanna make sure I keep tabs on what's going on in that particular department, some department somewhere where I know that there's a quote unquote toxic person, I'm gonna find one person that I can work with in that department and keep them in the orbit. I'm gonna keep my ears and any vibrations from the web coming from that end, I'm gonna make sure that I hear it, I can placate it, I can sandbag it, boom, okay? And I quite actively do this. It's a natural thing that I do, and over time I've just kind of noticed. So I just wanted to kind of thread that middle road there of, well, how do you actively recruit people without being a politician? It has to be tied to some kind of competence, some kind of use. You need to keep them within boxes, okay? And if again you're thinking, oh, this sounds a little too, if you're thinking that, then that's part of the problem. And by the way, people come to me for this kind of advice, right? Because if they know me, they know that I tend not to get into certain kinds of issues, or shall I say, stuck in certain kinds of issues, right? And then I tell them things like, okay, well, look, you're gonna need to keep people at arm's length, or do this or do that. And the minute they start pushing back, like, oh, but this complaining, right? They just want to complain. Then it may get to the point where I have to actually cut that person off, okay? Make sure or tighten their box, because they're toxic to me. The kind of person who wants to be in the whole mess of extroverted feeling and complaining about other people, that's toxic to me, okay? I don't want any of that. So that's kind of like the secondhand toxicity that I don't even deal with secondhand toxicity. So if you can't control yourself, you're getting cut off.
Very well put. Very well put. Let's keep going.
2. Establish boundaries. This is the area where most people tend to sell themselves short. They feel that because they work or live with someone, they have no way to control the chaos. This couldn't be further from the truth. Once you've found your way to rise above a person, you'll begin to find their behavior more predictable and easier to understand. This will equip you to think rationally about when and where you have to put up with them, and when you don't. If you let things happen naturally, you are bound to find yourself constantly embroiled in difficult conversations. But if you set boundaries and decide when and where you'll engage a difficult person, you can control much of the chaos. Number
Yeah, and it does seem like there's some, uh, maybe it's one big point, not two separate points there.
Yeah, that one, they really threw me for a loop there. They're really violating my rule with those first two. I could swear the first rule was set boundaries, and the second rule was set boundaries.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, all right, fine.
yeah. But I think, you know, they took a different approach to it. There's a different angle to it. They mentioned, and I even said in my brief remarks before, uh, my brief sort of monologue or just kind of introduction to the show, when I said, you know, this is going to be a good show for those that, you know, are dealing with toxic folks at work, but it also could be toxic folks at home, you know, in your family. And so sometimes folks have a hard time laying out those very clear, this is the line. If you try to step over this line, we're going to have an issue. Just don't step over this line. You know, a lot of people, they feel like that's unfeeling, and you're cold. You know, I'm your family. You know, if you don't you don't have anything if you don't have family. You know, they try to use that kind of stuff on you to get you to violate your to violate your boundaries. Um,
Yeah, it's so on the family piece, or on further going deeper into the ways of setting these limits, right? Because I did say in the first part, like, oh, they didn't really tell you how to set limits, but the first time you're just like, oh, well, don't stay around the smoke, right? Now they're like, okay, well, how about family? For me, family has always kind of been like my my little enemy. And so, you know, I gravitated towards Ayn Rand very, very early, as people tend to do, right? When you get into Ayn Rand, you get into Ayn Rand early, and then you kind of graduate from there into perhaps more substantive philosophers. But no, not dissing Ayn Rand, because as some people tend to do after they finish their Rand years, they're like, oh, Ayn Rand is just you know, it's like, no, I'm not doing that. But one of the reasons why I gravitated towards Ayn Rand was because she seemed to be the first person that like recognized that kind of, hey, you're a singular individual, and your what people call selfishness, people have been calling you selfish and all that stuff, there's nothing wrong with it. These people feel entitled to you is the correct interpretation. And one of the ways, so people want to feel entitled to stuff all the time, and family is a great excuse for them to actually think that they are entitled, right? I'm in your family, therefore you should listen to me, therefore you should you should carry my baggage, or I have the right to say this, that, or the other. Now, Ayn Rand has a particular personality type, okay, and that's kind of why I gravitated towards her. And this is the kind of personality where you're really, really, you have a very strong core, where it's like, if you're the type that you remember the way all the way back to a baby, and you can literally think like, yeah, I was the same person, like, you know, like, I was that same baby, that's me right now, then you have an advantage in this regard. However, even after you decided, hey, people are not entitled to my time, my space, my energy, as family tends to think they do, you still then have to have a way of not being a complete wrecking ball in the world, right? And that has to do, I believe, with communication. You have to develop very good communication skills, because that's the means by which you set these boundaries, right? It's not just setting boundaries with yourself, perhaps also involve words and some kind of logic and stuff like that internally, fine. But more so important when you're interfacing with others, because the only way you can interface with others is through this communication thing, both verbal and nonverbal. But you have to develop your verbal skills very well, so that you can tell people exactly which box, which line, okay, where the longitude and the latitude of the line, why you've drawn the line there, why you're not going to back up, what the consequences are. So communication skills are going to be very important in this regard. Not just this silly, vague communication skills that you hear all the time. Like, oh, you just got to communicate more, communicate more. I'm talking about becoming very good with uh, discerning people's what they're saying, where what they're the communication come from others, so that you can clearly see when they're starting to cross the boundary. But you also very communicate very clearly to them what these boundaries are and what you are about, so that it is very 100% clear, and it does not become some kind of you're just bashing people over the head, or you're being cold, or something like that. I don't. What are your thoughts about the communication
Yeah,
piece?
no, no, I agree with that. Uh, that was a I think good way to put that. Sometimes people get called selfish because actually what it is that the person that's calling them selfish feels that they're entitled to something that they're not giving them for whatever reason, and so that's actually why they even think to call you selfish. Now there actually are in general people are selfish, so
Yeah.
you could kind of say that about anyone, and it would be some degree of truth to it. But in common usage, um, this kind of selfishness that we're talking about, somebody claiming that you're selfish, you may or may not be actually selfish. You may just be on your purpose, and that means that
Yeah, aesthetically, people don't. This is the way in which I try to understand their perspective. Is I compare it with cats. I'm a cat person. I don't like cats. I mean, I'm not a. I don't mind cats either. But when I say I'm a cat person, I don't mean I'm a cat person in terms of pets. What I mean is I'm a cat, and if you if you observe me, you'll kind of just know what I mean. You have dogs and you have cats, and if you are around Ike physically in physical space for a day or two, you'll be like, he's a cat type, right? And cat types, they're not bothering you, but there's just something a little suspicious about them, right? You're like, what is he about? Why is he always off on his own somewhere over there in the corner? Why doesn't he want to
mm-hmm.
come into the middle of the fold? Why does he not want to come frolic with us, right? And the cat, you can't really quite pinpoint what the issue with the cat is, okay? And that's why I kind of say it's an aesthetic thing. It's just their presentation, their manner of what you observe about the way they move, the way they talk, the way they act, and all those kinds of things. So I can understand why when you see a cat, you're a little suspicious. You think he's selfish. Another one I hear is you think they think that I think I'm better than them. Now that may be 100% true, okay, but I never said it, right? And I don't know why it's relevant. Like I'm just being me, and here you come saying you think you're better than me, right? I'm like, so but that kind of thing, and I think the cat analogy works well because people kind of think that about cats too. Like, oh, look at that cat, so smug, and that's because the cat is not
Because they
very
are smug.
open in the they are kind of smug. They're not very open in the way that people would want, and they don't come and frolic in the fold the way people would want. So I understand why people would look at a cat that way. So be more like a cat, definitely, because a cat does not get embroiled in drama very much.
Hmm. All right, let's keep going.
Number 3, ignore in some cases. Now, before you put this strategy to work, consider a few factors. You have to learn the dynamics of ignoring a toxic person. A toxic individual craves attention all the time, even when it's an occasion to celebrate another person or their accomplishments. They will get loud and they will interrupt other people. That said, if you choose to ignore them, make sure there are plenty of other people around. Because sometimes, if you've been submissive to the toxic person for a long time, and you find yourself alone with them, then ignoring them will not work. You can only ignore toxic people when you are in public, because in public, they tend to hide aggressive retaliation, so they are less likely to become angered for being ignored. Number 4.
All right. So they were trying to hedge against lawsuits by
Ignoring
by
them
telling
in
people,
public.
don't just ignore people in private when they can when they can you know uh, throw a few haymakers your way. Uh, Make sure you do it in public so that people
Hmm.
uh, so they don't feel like they can do this anonymously. You know, in the public, they won't be able to get away with throwing you a few jabs and body blows. So
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think this is it's a good one. Again, it's a continuation of the first point of setting boundaries.
right.
The ignoring people. Hmm. How does one do that? One way of actually doing that is simply keeping quiet. Again, this has to do with communication skills. You need to, and that's why I started out this whole thing about it's all about your internal, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to work very well with what I call mastering of your subjective consciousness. You need to know very well your video game controller, your map, your interface, that whole screen from which the world appears to you. You need to be very comfortable with it so that it doesn't cause you to immediately react. Where you're like, okay, cool, I see that thing over there in the corner of the screen. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what I mean, but I'll just stick with the analogy of video game screen, mastery of your subjective consciousness in a way such that you can literally sit, listen, breathe when someone is saying something or doing something, and it typically sucks the air out of what they're doing, and just let it pass. Don't react. Actually, there was a little joke that I saw on Instagram or something, where some lady is like, "My husband always gets angry." Talking to a doctor, right? She went to a doctor and says, "My husband is always getting angry. What do I do about it?" And the doctor says, "Okay, next time he gets angry, just take a glass of water, put it in your mouth, and keep swishing with the glass of water until it's over." And then she came back and was like, "Wow, that worked. But what does water have to do with this?" It's like, well, it's not the water, it's the fact that you kept your mouth shut, right? And you should have seen the comments. You should have seen the comments about how toxic the joke was. Um, it was not an American lady that put the joke on. It's just a. It was not a Western lady that put on the joke, but I think that intuitively everybody gets it. That when you engage when you start talking and that's when the issue continues. And there's something enticing about wanting to talk. And also there's something enticing, just like there's something enticing about wanting to go to somebody else to complain about the people, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I say, if that is something that's going on with you, you need to fix it because you are also the toxic person.
Good stuff. Let's keep going.
Don't share secrets with gossipers. Toxic people will share deep secrets with others just to seem momentarily interesting, and they will frequently judge or gossip about people behind their backs. If you meet somebody who does this, do not be fooled into thinking that they are gossiping with you just because they like you or trust you. They will just as easily betray your trust. Toxic people will often talk to you about someone else in the hopes that you will agree with them. Then they will go and tell the other person what you said. This creates friction between two people, leaving the toxic person in control. It's a divisive and manipulative method of gaining friends or power in a social group. Don't fall for it.
All right. This is a good one. And this is can be a challenging one to navigate because you may or may not be able to sniff this out right from the beginning. I have grown to just basically be very, very guarded with who I share information with because okay, this is part of the reason why they say it's lonely on top. If you're the boss, or if you're higher up in an organization, you're always going to have folks that are trying to jimmy themselves and position themselves whatever way they can do so. And so if you share something, they can run and go tell somebody else. You're saying, hey, I'm telling you this in confidence, but they still go and talk to somebody else about it, you know. And you might think that you can trust this person because they came to you to share somebody else's stuff. But you have to recognize immediately that if they were willing to share something else that was told to them in confidence, then you know that they're also telling your stuff. Right? You're not the special one. You're just like everybody else. My son started saying this thing, and every time he says it, I tell him, he said he started saying, "I'm built different." You know that goofy stuff. Of course, my son is 9. Okay, so it's like I'm trying to control myself from not just laughing uncontrollably. But every time he says that, I tell him, "No, you're not. You're the same as everybody else. You're not built different. You're the same as everybody else." And that it's just, you're not special. That I think that's something that people just need to understand. You're not special. You're not special, and perhaps you have a little bit more power or a little bit more control of your surroundings than someone else does, but that just makes you a target. You are not built different. You are built the same.
I'm built different. Yeah, that's a good one. That would be funny to hear from a 9-year-old. But yeah, I think this is a good one in terms of the recognition of toxic behavior. If you're somebody that's kind of generally unaware about this thing, then yes, it's a good entry level to kind of be like, okay, if somebody comes to you and starts telling you about this other person, right? You need to kind of be guarded about it and watch out. Now, human beings talk about other people, as a matter of fact, right? So it doesn't mean that. Let me not get too nuanced or deep into the weeds with it, because I don't think it's effective. It doesn't really, because at that point it's a question of now just management and tactics, and your personality as well. You talk about generally being guarded with information, and perhaps partly due to personality, partly due to being having learned that as a result of making certain mistakes, perhaps, okay, or learning from other people's mistakes, perhaps. But if you go back to what I said about dealing with people on the basis of competence and what they quote unquote bring to the table, and also knowing how to limit your scope, then it will be the case that there's not gonna you're gonna be limited in a lot of that kind of just talk, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, the guys that I drink beer with are they're just, it's like, well, what do you do with these guys that you drink beer with? You just drink beer with them? That's the thing. It's like, well, no, I don't. There should not be a category of people I drink beer with. It's got to be something else of substance that these people are about, or that you're about with them, such that the conversations, for the most part, are going to be around that substance. And there's not going to be a lot of room for a lot of just random stuff coming up about random people, So, yeah.
And it's funny. It reminds me. Everybody knows I love The Office. It reminds me of an episode of The Office where, so Michael Scott has a hard time keeping secrets. He wants to know secrets. He wants to be included, but he really has a hard time not telling people secrets. And one time, in a moment of, I don't know, weakness, I don't know exactly what to say, but in a vulnerable moment, that's what I want to say. Jim confides in Michael that he has a crush on Pam. You know, uh, the secretary, Pam. He has a crush on her. Now, but Pam has been engaged to Roy for years and years. So he tells Michael that he has a crush on Pam, and he tells him, he doesn't say anything in that moment not to say anything, but later he realizes that he needs to tell him don't say anything. But unfortunately, Michael had already let the cat out the bag and said something to somebody, not uh, actually he didn't do it out of spite or because now he has like the secret stuff and now everybody else wants to hear what he has to say. He didn't say it for that reason. He was frustrated about something and he blurted it out, and then he realized immediately that he shouldn't have done that. That was one situation. But then there's another situation where Michael discovers that Stanley is having an affair on his wife. Okay? And so, and the way he discovers it is because some underlings, actually some interns, they told him that they saw Stanley with a woman when out at a restaurant or something that they happened to be at. And so they told Michael. Michael starts telling folks around the office, "Oh, Stanley's having an affair." He starts doing this. So so then somebody says, well, hold up. That can't be true because his wife's out of town. Well, no, actually, no, that's not what it was. He just told somebody that Stanley was with his wife somewhere in town, and Phyllis says, no, that's not true because his wife's out of town. So then Michael puts two and two together. Oh, Stanley's having an affair. Mm-hmm. So then he runs around. He's telling everybody that Stanley's having an affair. Stanley fesses up to him, tell him he was having an affair, but that he was about to break it off, and he begs him, please don't tell anybody. But of course, Michael had already told everybody. So then he goes back in and he starts making up a bunch of lies about everybody and spreading all these rumors. And then he goes around saying that, oh man, it's a weird day for false facts. It's a weird, it's a weird day for, and like this. And one by one, everybody starts tracing back where these rumors are coming back to him. But one of the things that he made up was actually true, and that was that Pam was pregnant. He just made that up, but it turns out she was pregnant. So, yeah. So anyhow, wow. I'm saying that stuff to say, nobody's special. You can't just talk to anybody, and no matter how lonely you are, you have to be very careful with who you share information with, because they will most certainly, when the right moment arises, they will use that information to their own advantage. That's just what human beings do.
Just one couple of sentences about it is, there was a literature professor of mine back in college. He was a World War II veteran. He's probably not around anymore. And one of the things that he said was, there's no such thing as a secret between two people. Like, if you have a secret, then it should go with you to it's just you to your grave.
Right.
Once you let it out, it's not a secret anymore. Right. And you should be willing to accept that, at least one other person knows it, even if it's the person's wife that you told. and then her best friend at least, or something like it's it's no, oh, it's between two people. No, it doesn't end there.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Number 5, recognize and ignore insults. Toxic people love to insult others, and they do this in a subtle way. People like this will attempt to disguise insults with compliments. They will say things like, "I'd never have the confidence to wear that," or "You do well when you try." Although these may sound like kind statements, they are dropping little seeds of doubt in your mind by putting conditions on your capabilities. Learn to hear the truths behind the veil of compliments and then ignore them. You will know you have grown when you can actually laugh at what they say. But just be careful, because laughing tends to make them angry. Number 6, allow
People are crazy. So be careful. They throw in random little minute facts about, well, don't do it. You have to do it amongst other people. For example, with the other one about ignoring people. Now they're like, well, be careful about laughing too, because laughing might trigger. That is funny. My initial reaction to to this one though is develop habits of of criticizing yourself, right? Um, I don't think you could go wrong with that. Like, I do it to the extreme where it's almost like, and this is from the other people's perspective, right? For me, it's just natural. But you could look at me and be like, oh, there's a lot of, there's this kind of a self confidence, or like, oh, like, self belief in oneself kind of thing going on. But then in the next minute, I could just be talking about how I'm a BAN for this, I'm a BAN for that, and da 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 da. Because that's always my. I think I mentioned once before that I'm never doing the things that I mean, there's always balls that you've dropped, things you should have done, things you haven't done yet, blah 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 blah, all the way till I get in the grave, dude. All kinds of shortcomings. And I say that not because I'm not gonna try to pick them up or because I want to go sit in the therapy couch. I just say because it's true. Okay.
Yep.
And there's the kinds of people who say, oh, but you can't say that. Now, I hate that statement with a passion. Okay. But you can't say that. It's like, it's true. like, what do you mean I can't say it? There's a certain kind of a notion that, oh, if you say it, the devil is going to hear it and the devil is going to use it against you, or, to be a bit facetious. Or if you say it, somehow you're speaking it into reality. And,
oh my goodness.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't speak that into reality. You can't say that you're a loser. It's like, I'm a loser for freaking effing this thing up. I'm a loser. But the reason why you want to be able to develop that thing is because then when you hear certain things from outside that are, veiled criticisms, like, you're good when you try, blah, 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 it's not going to be any worse than you've told yourself, right? It's part of, again, the whole living from the inside out type stuff, working on yourself, not having areas of your soul that are kind of sore, or shall we say so delicate, without any scar tissue or whatever the other word is that I'm looking for, calluses, right? That if once anything, a little bit of wind just blows on it, you're like, oh my God, right? That's your fault. It's your goddamn problem that you did not go in there and criticize yourself about it already. And if you're so delicate that you cannot say certain truths, then, dude, go to a therapist, fix that, 100% fix that. Now, you may not get all the way to the extreme with my BAN philosophy, right? Where you love listening to Dan Pena and you just like whipping yourself, like, that might be unhealthy for you, okay? You don't have to get to that extreme. But my point is, you need to be able to know all your issues, be able to speak them to yourself, practice speaking them to yourself, knowing that they're there, so that whenever you get an inkling of it from the external environment, you just don't crumble. Again, it's all part of knowing that user interface that you have, such that things within that user interface don't just cause you to react. because you've already tested that ground before. I've been to that part of the map before. It's no big deal, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and then of course that would tick people off too, right? Because now it just seems like they can't get to you. There's no way for them to, you know, to get under your skin. Um, but you know, you can't be concerned about other folks. I mean, you have to do what you need to do. But I was
Do
going
you
to
take
say about
constructive
that.
criticism? I'm sorry, and I'll let you just go what you're saying here, but you can add into it the answer to the question about, because I find something constructive even with trolls. The reason I find it is because I already told myself that thing probably 2 weeks ago. Right? 2 weeks ago, I already know, man, I'm a little kind of, maybe I need to do this or maybe I need to change that. And then somebody
Right.
comes in a troll way where it's like 95% troll, but 5% right thing. And I'm like, yeah, they're right. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, um, the criticisms that really sting, or the trolling that really stings, is the trolling that they're actually saying some stuff that's actually true. That's the one that really stings, right? And you see people get particularly annoyed or animated. Um, it may be because of that. Um, but what was I going to say?
You started out the statement with "I was," so I don't know if it was a story
Yeah,
or a reference
yeah,
or.
yeah. So,
I,
um, 1 second here. This was, yeah, right. So the sort of the comments that annoy me the most are those sort of uh, passive aggressive ones, right? So if someone just says directly to me, "Hey, man, X, Y, and Z," and they could yell it, they could say it straight, whatever. That's one thing, and I'm kind of like, okay, whatever. But it's that sort of backhanded compliments, you know. I remember, I remember one time, and I was, oh, this is I don't know, 17, 18 years ago. It was back in 2005, and um, I did this program. It was for Black History Month, and it was a lot of bells and whistles. It was a lot of components and a lot of stuff to do. Um, and part of the presentation, in addition to some sort of narration and providing context for this program, was me performing in a variety of different groups, ensembles, highlighting, um, uh, jazz musicians of significance, black jazz musicians of significance. It's Black History Month. And so, uh, I played the gig and everything, and I had a lot of people came to check it out and all of that. And I saw a review in the paper. And this was a big paper. It's the biggest circulating paper in the state of Ohio at the time. And the guy says, and this line always stuck with me, and it bothered me for a long time. And I finally got to the point where I was like, you know what? I I I, I recognize now that some people are incapable of giving you a direct compliment because they themselves they they're struggling with something, and for them to admit something positive about you without them, without the
Mhm.
backhanded thing, it's almost impossible for them to do. It's like
Mhm.
they can't do it. They're not capable of it, you know. So anyhow, this music critic that came to the program, and he wrote this. He said, "What did he say? With uh, what did he said with something about with talent so big or something like this, it almost he said that it almost comes close to trumping good taste, right? So this is like the comment, and now most of that is a compliment, but coming close to trumping good taste, that's that sort of he's talented, but he's not in control of his talent. It's like this is what he's actually saying, right? Um, but he says it in this sort of veiled way, and that stuck with me for a long time. That like really frustrated and bothered me for a long time because I'm thinking, is a big art, it's a big paper, is a great opportunity, and I suppose being written about is great anyway, either way. But that really bothered me, and I remember sharing that with in that part of the article with some other folks, and of course they saw the same thing because that's the first thing that I do is like because you could read something and because you're like
Mm-hmm.
maybe too sensitive or something, I don't know what it is. You just so you hear it a certain way and maybe that's not even the way that it was said, right? or
Mm-hmm.
or that's not how other people took it, but like everybody took it the same way. They're like this dude. so um so you have to recognize that often is the case when people are jealous of you or they have some personal insecurity or whatever it is, they may not be able to just give you a compliment. They gotta
Mm-hmm.
they gotta put a few jabs in the compliment. They're just
I
not capable.
want to double click on something you said there about the and how you ended it as well. This point about projection, let's call it, right? That
Mm-hmm.
psychologically things that we do are about ourselves.
Yep.
Okay. And again, something that you'll learn or you come to learn when you decide to start living from the inside out, or at least try that side a little bit. Try living from the inside out. And I want to give just a little bit of a tidbit here that whenever you find yourself annoyed at something, there's two things going on at least. If you're not completely delusional, the thing did happen. Yes, somebody, oh, your spouse is annoying you, or somebody left their shoes by the stereo on you, whatever it is, the thing did happen. Number one. The other thing that's going on is that there's something about you reflected in the behavior or in the action or the outcomes or whatever that you're observing that you don't like about yourself. Okay.
Mm.
It is always true. Okay. And the reason why I separated the two is it's not a way of excusing what happened, right? It's not like, oh, therefore your wife didn't really do anything because,
Yep.
it's all about you. It's like, yes, she did that. Okay. But you need to go and it's an opportunity, especially the more exercise you get about it. It's an opportunity to just, and I ask myself this question. I literally do when I get in a state like this, even before I know the answer, right? So it's not like I just always know. So I have to stop and then ask myself, what about this behavior or what about me don't I like in this behavior, right? And I always find it. It's like, yes, it's because I do this kind of thing too. And it's something typically that you're trying to improve. It's something that you struggle with. Okay, you're trying to improve. You're trying to become less dusty in some particular aspect, and then you see it out there. Somebody does it, and you're like, "Rah!" Right? It's always true that it is something about you. Okay, it takes a lot of self awareness to do external rule and marker to whenever you get upset with something or somebody, just stop and ask yourself, separate from what they did, okay? Yes, go ahead and do what you're going to do about what they did or not, but make sure you do the iteration whereby you go to yourself and say, hey, what about me? Because as a matter of fact, that might be the most important thing to learn about the whole situation, right? The most
Yep.
important thing to learn about the situation is, oh, there is a particular insecurity to use that kind of a word. There's a kind of insecurity there, and there's something about you that you're working on, and that when you see it out there, you lash out.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's keep going.
Allow liars to trip themselves up. Toxic people will often lie compulsively, not just to others, but to themselves. They will often perform mental gymnastics to convince themselves that their lies are reality. Recounting a true event is relatively easy, but lies are actually very hard to keep up. Keeping track of a bunch of made-up stories is difficult, and liars end up exposing themselves over time by contradicting themselves with other lies. Number 7. Don't
Well, all right. Pinocchio action there.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think it's. I think
That
it's.
was not really a tip. It was just kind of saying that people lie, or toxic people lie. But go ahead.
Right. It wasn't really a tip, but it's a it's something to know and to note, something to look out for, and perhaps an approach to dealing with it. So, in other words, you may not necessarily have to call them a liar in public, tell other people that they're a liar, get them in a public forum and expose them for being a liar. That might not be the thing, you know, and maybe in a certain circumstance that's necessary, because maybe they're saying something that is causing some significant issue for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you need them to tell the truth in order for that issue to go away. So that's a different thing. But if it's just sort of annoying to you, you can just sit back and wait, and it's probably going to all blow up in their face eventually. Because if you're having a certain sense about them being a liar, or other people have a sense of it. You're not you're not built different. You're not different. You're the same as everyone else. If you have a sense of something, then you're probably not the only person that has a sense of that. And that means, and that will multiply as the person is around more. And more people will be aware that this is a liar.
Elon Musk comes to mind, just because of the lie thing. People, let me put it bluntly. Elon Musk lies a lot. Now, well, why does he lie and blah blah blah? It would then be the question. It's not in this toxic category, but it just comes to mind. The reason why he lies is because he tends to do things that are okay. They're capital intensive and they're not obvious. So he's doing space rockets and cars and stuff like that. It's similar to like if you're doing like fusion research and stuff, blah blah blah. But you're a publicly traded company, and this is with regards to Tesla in particular, right? SpaceX is privately traded, so or privately, so he doesn't have to lie as much about it. If you're in a publicly traded company, people want to hear stuff about what's happening in the next quarter. In the car type world, where you're pushing the boundaries, it's not just making cars, right? It's making electric cars. He's getting into the self-driving thing, blah blah blah. You're pushing the boundary. There's gonna be like 3/4 where things are going in reverse. I mean, you know what I mean. You know what I mean in terms of like, but you got to tell people because it's publicly traded and it's the stock market. All kinds of lies. Okay. And I'm not gonna judge him on that. He's the one that decided to get into that stuff and then make it a publicly traded company. There's something wrong with people wanting you to tell them something every quarter, right? There's something wrong with that system. And if you're gonna play in that system, I guess he has to lie. I guess that's what he's doing. But that just came to mind when the whole thing of people lying all the time. So there are different kinds of liars for sure, right? And the Elon Musk kind of lie is, is this, and a lot of entrepreneurs do that, salespeople, marketing people. But just for Elon Musk's case, is because it's a publicly traded company where every quarter people are looking for X, Y, and Z from you so that they can, they can either buy or sell the stock and all that kind of stuff, right? But when you're doing something like Tesla, where it's a long range thing, I ain't got nothing to tell you for a year. We're gonna come up to a bunch of bumps in the road. But because I got to say something, I just say, hey, self driving is coming next month, but it's a lie. Anyways, just wanted to.
Politicians,
Oh,
of course.
next election, right?
Right. Politicians lie. There's a lot of folks that lie in a variety of ways, and you have to know that that's pretty common and basic kind of human behavior, and over time it will reveal itself. Now, I think one of the issues that we have today is that only a small percentage of people are actually ever held accountable for lying. Right?
Mm.
I'm talking about public people. Big name public people that everybody knows, blue check mark people. Only a very small percentage of them ever get really called to the carpet, right? And that's just what it is, because there's so much lying that if you start cracking down on this lie over here, that means all these other lies that you just got done telling, somebody gonna come for you. So,
especially if they're journalists, or in that world where they can influence public perception, they tend to be able to just paper over their lies. And what comes to mind is there were a lot of lies told without getting anywhere near what is a conspiracy theory. It's just simple lies that were told during the pandemic, right? A lot of things that were lies and anathemas to rationality. And there was an article written recently in the past few months that asked for a pandemic amnesty, they called it. So these same journalists who lied about stuff are saying, let's just forget about all that. Let's not go start litigating who said what. Just wipe the slate clean. Come see, come sa, whatever. Right? So they're now saying, like, amnesty. Now, obviously, no one was going to put them on trial and chop their heads off, but they're basically saying, look, just ignore all that stuff we lied about. Yeah, it was a crazy time, So yeah, you are correct.
See, this is why.
And by the way,
this is. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just one thing about in terms of this kind of lying people, or people who may exaggerate things. There's this guy called Adam Newman who started WeWork. I don't know if you know that the story of that company. One of the more popular, shall we say, liars out there in the space of entrepreneurism. The number one person is, uh, she did the Theranos thing, the blood company thing. I forget, Mrs. Holmes. I think it's Jessica Holmes or whatever. And she was number one. And then this guy, Adam Newman, is number two. The FTX guy now probably is going to take over them later. But he just got he started a new company, and he just got refunded, right? By, he's getting funding at a valuation of about $1 billion. And it was the company's valued at that, for another company that he's trying to start up. So to the point of like, hey, he just did this whole big lie thing and publicly, and he went back, okay, kind of chilled for about 6 years, and he's back.
Yeah. I was gonna say something. We were talking about the amnesty thing. Yeah. See, this is why the government, like, doing things, mandating things where people have to comply, it's usually a bad deal. It's a bad idea, because you know that people lie all the time. They're stretching stuff. They're secretly trying to get trying to hook their crony up. All that stuff is happening all the time. And so then when people, oh, goodness. So when people are calling into question, they're saying, that sounds like hogwash what you're talking right now. And then you just tell them, no, shut up. You must comply. You must deal with X, Y, and Z. Then, of course, when it's shown that these folks were lying, like people were saying, hey, this stuff doesn't seem right. Now you already forced a bunch of people to do stuff that they didn't want to do. So it's messed up.
You're 100% correct. But if I were to throw a wrinkle there about that issue, is that because human beings are so messy and entitled, it's like a lot of times they want to be lied to, and they want to be forced to do something because, and I keep stepping on the USB for my camera here, but if you don't lie to them, there's another kind of blowback which they give, right? Because they never want to take accountability, right? They never want to take responsibility, right?
Right.
They're like, oh, you didn't tell us, It's like, okay, well, let me force them to do it. And it may be the case, right? And this is not any kind of justification whatsoever. It's just like a philosophical observation. It may be the case that statistically, the masses, right, rather prefer to be lied to, right? Rather than if you just let them, because it just goes into that whole, well, do we just let people go gamble their money, without having these kind of rules of accredited invest? Everybody, people just going to lose by gambling. I mean, invest in certain kind of more risky things, as opposed to, hey, there's a gate here and you can't invest in SpaceX unless you are an accredited investor, right? Or certain other kinds of private companies like that, because people are just going to throw their whole family money in and then come back and blame you, right? So people are messy. People are messy. Governments are also made up of people, and they are messy too. The most annoying part, though, I guess, is that there's never any truth of the kind which I just said that is stated. Like, hey, I gotta lie to the people, like that kind of thing. That would even be noble. Like, look, like the reason I have to lie to the people, because in the balance of things, if I don't lie to them this way, it's not like you're lying all the time about everything. If I don't lie to them in this way, look at the kind of consequences that will happen. What do you have to say? That kind of honesty is typically not there. They just double down, triple down on the lie, and so on.
Yeah. But the thing is that I think there's a great fear that that'll get soundbited.
Yeah.
With them saying you gotta lie to people. They'll just keep playing that during elections, and then people won't vote for them because, see, look, they're admitting that they lie. It's like
the argument for the philosopher king, or the argument for a certain kind of aristocracy, right? Because it is definitely a flaw of democracy that you can't just say certain truths because
Right.
It's like, I mean, the way Socrates put it is basically, hey, on the one hand, you have this doctor who's telling you, hey, you need to go to the gym, you need to watch your diet, you need to check this, you need to check that, you need to check your heart rate, you gotta discipline in order to make you healthy. And then you have this other person who's like, hey, here's all this candy, eat all the candy you want.
Yeah.
Who the masses going to vote for, right? The masses are going to vote for the candy person, and that's democracy for you.
Oh, that's great. Let's do one more point, and then we're going to end up doing the second half of this on your channel next week.
Yep.
So this is point 7. We're going to do one more point. We got 15 points. So we're doing the first 8 now. We'll do the last 6 wait a minute, my math is not good. The last 7 points we'll do next week. So let's see what this next one is. He says, don't something.
Fall prey to pity. Toxic people use pity as another form of manipulation. They even make their victims feel bad for finally standing up for themselves. Intelligent people are able to recognize self-pity and the unique way that it's used by toxic people. I'm not saying that it's horrible to feel sorry for yourself at times, but what I am saying is that toxic people use this as a way to regain control. They will continue to blame others for all the issues in their life, as long as there's someone willing to listen. Avoiding self-pitying people and refusing to justify their apathy will stop you from being sucked into their world of self-perpetuating failure. Number 8, stand up to bullies.
All right, we're gonna start with standing up for bullies next week. So, folks, make sure you come back for that. But let's talk about this. Don't fall. What is it for? What was it called again? Don't fall for
pity, I guess.
Yeah, don't fall don't fall prey to pity. That's what it was. So what do you think of this?
First thing that comes to mind is that you need to realize that quote unquote toxic people that they're describing, these are not always, and as a matter of fact, okay, they don't have to be these masterminds that are very conscious of what they're doing. That you find this kind of behavior to be the people are typically very unaware, and I think it was mentioned in the first point about their inability to to be accountable. That's why you don't confront them directly, because they don't even, that's just going to go right over their head. Like, okay. But the reason why I say that is this kind of behavior of, using pity, it's not something that they plan, right? It just happens. It's a natural kind of emotional response. Okay, look, mammals typically freaking fall, roll over, expose their underbelly to kind of be like, hey, that's not necessarily pity, but it's adjacent to it. In other words, there's a natural kind of, I can influence you by showing a certain kind of weakness, make you feel bad for me type stuff, right? So
Right.
this just naturally happens with a lot of people a lot of times. I'm recalling certain situations, and if you let it pass the first time, they're going to want to use it over and over and over again. With a lot of these tips, with a lot of these ways of pushing back on these people, it is the case that if you don't handle things in time, it gets harder and harder to deal with it. A stitch in time saves 9, as the English say, right? That it's never gonna get easier. It's not like, oh, if I put it up till the next time it'll be easier. No, it's just gonna be harder next time. So it might end up being like a huge blow up where you just have to ignore, some ridiculous, where it might be something real that that is going on with them that they're using, to
As leverage, yeah.
to elicit this kind. Yeah, but you're just gonna have to ignore it. You're gonna have to be like, nope, I don't care. It doesn't matter. And the last word on that is the I don't care and it doesn't matter thing that I've been kind of harping on this whole time, which is, hey, you got to start with yourself and be able to remove that aspect of yourself. And it's you do it every time. It's not a you remove it and it's gone forever. Whatever that aspect of yourself that makes you feel obligated, that makes you want to say, oh, how is that going to make me look? How will other people see me? You are participating in toxicity, and you are a toxic person in that situation. Okay, you need to watch that in yourself. But the way in which you can maybe feel better about it is you're not that influent, like you're not that important, okay, in people's lives. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like, oh, if you shut the door on somebody, oh, you're gonna drop off the face of the earth and go to hell. It's like, no. There are many other people, perhaps, whom are better suited to deal with this person's issues, right?
Mm.
Or maybe rock bottom is just right below you, and rock bottom is where they need to go in order to learn their lesson, right? In other words, you're not that important in when it comes to other people's outcomes. Even if it's a question of even letting somebody go from a job, there are other jobs out there, okay? And maybe this is the
Mm-hmm.
lesson that they needed to learn. And there's somebody else that maybe is willing to put up with their BS, a different company with a different culture, different kind of standards. You're not that important. And when it comes to what people think about you, you're going to find out that people weren't thinking about you. Okay? People are not thinking about you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to even, for example, you may have a, and you can use yourself as an example of like how much you think about other people, right? How much time, even if somebody like, let's say you're a great Jordan Peterson fan, how much time do you spend thinking about Jordan Peterson and what he's doing? We're doing probably like a tiny little fraction of your day. You got problems, you got bills, you got kids, you got this, you got that. You're not even thinking about this person whom is a big deal to you. So much so, some coworker of yours, what people are not thinking about you. So don't worry about how you may seem in their eyes. You're the one that's self-obsessed. You're obsessed with yourself, perhaps rightly so. After all, you have to live with yourself every day. But people don't have you in the brain like that. So that's a way of, again, just making yourself feel better about the fact that, look, you're not so consequential that you need to be weighing all the time. Oh, what's going to be my effect if I block this person off, or don't pity them, or whatever? Are they going to now die? It's like, no, 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 no. You're not that consequential. There'll be some pain or some momentary spike in emotion or whatever, and then it'll be over.
Yeah, this pity thing. Um, I really don't like that. It it like repulses me. Like when people do that, they try to use. Now, granted, it'll tend to be stuff that they caused, issues, scenarios that they caused. They'll try to use that stuff as a way to get leverage. Yes, thanks to the super chatter. Thank you very much, Don McKee 90 for the $5 super chat. Thank you very much. Says good show, fellows. Thank you very much for being here. That's evidence that the super chat function is fully operational. If you'd like to support super chat, super thanks for the replay gang, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word, spell out the word doctor. But that very is very irritating to me. I really don't like it when people use that strategy. And I can think of people that I have worked with in years past that have frequently used that sort of strategy, used it all the time, and then had the audacity to get irritated when people were not extending as much grace as they thought that they should get, and questioning people's humanity and all that kind of crap. That's particularly annoying. So yeah, that is a good one. I'm glad that they had that added to this 15 ways intelligent people deal with difficult and toxic people. This list.
So far, I got to say, they're not so. I mean, obviously, they're violating the rule in terms of the 15 and stuff like that. But these are good points. They're not stupid points. They haven't said anything ridiculous so far.
No.
So yeah, let's see. We're halfway there, and I think that so far they're getting good points. We'll see about the last 7 or 8 or whatever it is.
Right. See how much
Next,
blatant repetition there is. Uh,
uh,
okay. So a couple things happening. Of course, come back to see Case Closed, which will be on my channel this Sunday. This Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come back for All Star Panel, trending topics. Make sure you come back tomorrow night. I've got 2 things. There'll probably be 3 live streams tomorrow. So one stream will be the morning stream, Car Thunder. Then I am doing a Cannonball Adderley Nancy Wilson concert with Dr. Thunder Quartet, plus a great vocalist. So we'll be doing that 6:15 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. That's that stream time. And then, of course, Two Dads React, where we're going to be talking about some strange weather patterns and things that are happening in California. So that's going to be Two Dads React, and that'll be at 10:30. 10:30. Usually a 10 o'clock show. It'll be a 10:30 p.m. show. So make sure you come back to check that stuff out tomorrow. And then Friday there'll be, of course, a Car Thunder in the morning. And like I said, Sunday we've got Case Closed. And then on, back to Wednesday. Of course, I've got some other stuff happening in the week. I've got a Tuesday Thunder's Thoughts, and maybe a scaled down version, as I've done the last couple weeks. But of course, we'll be back with Ike. We'll be on Ike's channel next week for Getting Ish Done for the second part of this. So make sure you come and check that out. You have some final thoughts, Ike?
Final thoughts. You know what? I think I'm gonna. I'm not gonna open up this. Maybe I'll have the opportunity to bring up this other point that I'm thinking of right now in the show next week. Yeah, so that would be living with a little cliffhanger. But as a way of summary, again, my whole angle towards this is to have control, right, internally, right? Have control internally. When you have that control, actually, it helps to clarify your powers of observation, such that all these tips that were given, you'll be able to see the thing happening, right? If you don't have internal clarity and control, you're going to mix up all kinds of things. There's going to be mixed signals happening all the time, right? And one last thing, perhaps, is you need to know the kind of what you value when it comes to organizational hierarchy, power structure, and stuff like that. A while ago, I realized that I, for example, don't want to rise up in an organizational structure. What does that mean? That means I value a lot of autonomy. That's what that means. So I went and started my own thing. Okay. And if I was in the military, I always talk about the captain analogy. I'll be a captain in the special forces, where you have a small team, you're very nimble, you make tactical decisions, and you're actually the subject matter expert, because the generals are paper pushers and politicians. No, you need paper pushers and politicians. The general class, the CEO class, that's what they are. Why am I saying this? I'm saying, look, if you require a lot of autonomy, but you ended up being a general, now you're complaining about the fact that you have to play politics. That was kind of your, right? It's kind of your fault. You ended up there. Okay. So if you're someone like me and you want a lot of autonomy, you're going to need to find a way to create space for yourself where you have that autonomy. I like autonomy. I like to be an expert in what I'm doing, as opposed to be an expert in pushing paper and politicking. So yeah, this is because a lot of this has to do with workplace stuff, right? So you need to know, if you're going to go into the United Nations and now you're complaining about the fact that everything is woke and politics. It's like, bro, You should have become a day trader instead, where it's
Right.
about the money, your profit and loss, and nobody gives a crap what like you can say anything, do it, whatever, and it's about your profit and your loss, right? You don't go into the United Nations and start complaining about that. So those are my final thoughts, I guess.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming by. Make sure you go on over to Ike's channel. He's been doing. He's been on the daily content grind.
Yeah, we're
And
going to talk
why don't you
about
talk a little bit? Why don't you
Vladimir
talk a little
Putin.
bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been finding a way to do these shorter videos, right? That 30 minutes or less, and where I'm covering content on the geopolitical and economy front. One reason being that the economy is very important right now. Like in the current economic environment, it's good to stay on top of things, and also because geopolitics and the economy is just one of those other things. One of the things that I have some facility with, and that I can bring some kind of insights to in a particular concise way. So tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about some of the advantages that America has been gaining in this Ukraine war. Now, the war should have been prevented. We're not going to go all the way with Russia. At some point, the bromance between Zelensky and Biden is going to have to end, right? However, there's some things that America is getting out of it. I'm going to be covering the speech given by Vladimir Putin, but also mentioning the fact, for example, that American natural gas is what Europe is now dependent on, and they got rid of a bunch of, shall we say, environmental regulations and restrictions that would have made it such that these receiving plants, which they built, because there was a pipeline that got blown up, right? Pipeline from Russia to Europe, right? Uh, Actively blown up. Plus, also the sanctions make it such that Europe can be getting gas from Russia, blah blah blah. But now, American natural gas industry is really booming because of that. A lot of the woke and green types of regulations that would have made it such that the receiving stations that Europe built in order to receive natural gas shortened the time for them to build this stuff. It would have taken years, but they went to it real quick, and that's great news on the part of the natural gas thing. And then there's some other things too as well. So there are some benefits in a rather cold way that is coming to American industry. It's unfortunate that it has to take a war for people to just realize, hey, let's do something real and pragmatic. This whole kind of green energy thing is not real yet, right? Let's take intermediate steps and such like that. But yeah, definitely been staying on top of things in terms of the geopolitical and economy front. The last video I did, which you definitely go check out, is how China is exporting a lot of its AI opposition suppression technology to dictators all over the world. China has the opportunity to develop AI because AI in this particular space of surveillance and oppressing your opposition, because AI is all about data. He who has the data is able to train the AI to be able to do these intelligent things. And China has a bunch of people which they surveil very, very closely, right? So no other country has that kind of advantage of being able to create surveillance AI. And they sent it to this guy in Uganda, as an example, right? And he actively used Chinese AI technology to suppress his opposition in the most recent elections in Uganda. So check that out, and other such things. It's kind of what I'm up to in my daily grind these days.
That's great, man. Well, we'll see you later. Please come back next time. Make sure you come back to the channel tomorrow. Be streaming all day. All kinds of great stuff happening, and a great concert at 6:15 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you guys in the morning. Peace.